Welcome, everyone, back to the MPACT podcast. Evan Sappington here, joined by the one and only Ethan Christopher.
What's going on, everybody?
And you all know the drill. We're talking shop with all things ethics and diversity in the world of sports. Today's episode, we're going to be looking at the NFL and the current gambling crisis that had taken the league by storm over the summer.
Yeah, so before we get started, I kind of brought a little stat just to start for everybody. Did you know that roughly $60 billion are spent each year on gambling in the U.S.?
Damn, no, I didn't, man. That's actually crazy.
A lot.
Yeah, thinking about it, you could probably buy nearly half the NFL with that money. That's actually insane.
All right. Let's begin with a quick definition of gambling for those who may not be as familiar as we are with this subject. According to Merriam-Webster, gambling is defined as the practice of risking money or other stakes on a game or a bet.
Okay, yeah. I also think it is important to add, as of December 8th, 2023, it is not legal in the state of Missouri to gamble, so make sure not to rat yourself out when we're talking about anything.
Yeah, for sure. So with that definition in mind, kind of keeping on track here, let's speak on what gambling means to the NFL and the league and people like Roger Goodell. So he gave a memo, and it was provided to us and to everyone by ESPN. He said, and kind of in terms with his new betting policy, he listed a player who places a bet involving his own team will be suspended for at least 2 years, but bets placed by players on any NFL game will result in at least 1 year suspension. So kind of dissecting that and hearing this news, what would you have to say about all that?
Yeah, man. Kind of thinking back to like the summer and all the stuff that happened with gambling then, it wasn't something I really gave a whole lot of thought to. When I would think of gambling in sports, you think of all the pop culture stuff, like tipping off referees, owners tanking or fixing games, stuff like that. Obviously, there has to be a rule in place, but I guess I always kind of skipped over the possibility of players betting on their own games and stuff. Kind of like, if that makes sense,
Yep.
Especially when most of these guys are already making six figures.
Yeah, for sure.
It just kind of blows my mind that they would really do anything to kind of compromise that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we haven't seen many instances in the NFL in our recent lifetime of players betting on themselves or fixing the game, just until recently. That being said, I do think maybe a 2-year suspension for all this could be a little harsh compared to some other things that have been done by other people, but we don't need to get into that. But I do see the need for a rule overall, just to make sure these players aren't fixing the game, like you said, and just so that the integrity of the game isn't being hurt in any way.
No, absolutely, and that's the most important part. To kind of stay on this subject, that same article provided by ESPN talked about the rules the NFL has implemented to kind of crack down on some of the gambling loopholes. So, according to the NFL, betting on non-NFL sports while at a team facility or on team-related travel will now result in a 2-game suspension for a first violation, 6 games for a second, and at least 1 year for a third. And yeah, we've already seen a bunch of big guys in the league, some really big names, kind of voice their opinions or at least acknowledge the new ruling in subtle ways already throughout this season. Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen any of these, Ethan, but I got a couple videos we're going to pull up here in a second just to kind of show you guys what we're talking about.
Yeah, cool.
So we don't do bets in this facility. We made an agreement. Man, it was outside the facility, so I called J.O., FaceTimed him, and he said, if SC wins, he has to be Tommy Trojan. I said, okay. And he said, if Notre Dame wins, I got to be I don't know what this is called. I don't know what they call this. Whatever this green thing is. I said, sure. So, yeah, we made an agreement outside the facility. And yeah, that's that.
How do you feel like you're looking at?
I don't know, this material is trash. Everything about this is trash, but it is what it is.
Get this thing. Oh, boy. How we doing, guys? I'll give it about 2 more seconds. That's it. Go Cyclones, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, another friendly wager. Unfortunately, my Bearcats are struggling right now in the Big 12. And it's all right. We got Baylor this week. Hopefully we can bounce back and get the train rolling.
Yeah, I think in that one, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown, the first one with the leprechaun outfit, I think it's pretty funny. That's kind of what we've gotten to. Kind of have to preface before you speak about anything that there's no money or it's just a side bet, no money's involved. Just a little friendly wager like that. I think it's cool that they're on alert and they're kind of being lighthearted about it for sure.
No, yeah, absolutely. Kind of like walking on eggshells kind of feels
for
like.
sure.
But yeah, kind of the same with Travis Kelce there. At the very least, I like how they're all kind of staying a little lighthearted about it, kind of poking fun. I'm not saying these guys, who would probably never gamble on their own games anyways, shouldn't be upset, because especially how, the league went about it with these new rules. It's just nice to see that players aren't writing about it because, that's bad for everyone.
Yeah, and I think we saw another one last week. I don't know if you were watching football last week, but the Rams went for a late touchdown in the game, and Sean McVay answered questions about it, and he was like, yeah, our running back is on my fantasy team.
I did see that. That was the what was it, Rams-Browns?
Yeah,
like that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did see that. That was funny.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying with everyone being lighthearted. Everyone has their own thoughts and opinions, but let's kind of go off to the side here, take a look at gambling from an ethical perspective and what maybe the field of ethics has to say. So I don't know if you remember reading in our textbooks in Chapter 3 what it had to say. I wrote it down here to share on the episode. It gave its definition of gambling as gambling in sports is replete with unethical motives and practices. It is an anathema to continued integrity of sports, but has a long history and association with sports.
Yeah, you just said a whole lot of words, and I maybe understood half of them. But yeah, I guess if you've got your doctorate, that makes sense. But for those of us who don't know what that means, including myself, I got you. So after a series of Googling definitions, I can semi-confidently say that this just means that gambling has always been an integral part of sports, baseball in particular, even though it is to some degree unethical and unhealthy for the sports world. Alrighty, so I think that's enough jargon for me. I don't want my brain to melt, so let's move on before I think about it too much. Alrighty, Ethan, time to get to the nitty-gritty, what everyone's wanting to know about. Let's get into some case studies. Going to be pretty straightforward here. We're going to go over some of the biggest gambling suspensions in football over the last couple of years, and then give as educated as an opinion as we can. Sound good?
Yep, let's do it.
Yes, sir. Okay, so up first, we're going to go all the way back in time to 2022. I'll kind of set the stage here. So in the amazing world that is NCAA football, we've got the two biggest schools in Iowa. We got Iowa State and the University of Iowa, the Cyclones and the Hawkeyes. But their state is not the only thing that they have in common. Over the last couple of years, multiple players from both schools were caught partaking in a series of different gambling activities, all involving games the players were a part of. Big no-no. Nope. Earlier this year, however, Iowa authorities announced that there was no evidence to suggest the integrity of competition was impacted by wagers in Iowa State and Iowa athletic events.
Yeah, and that ruling by the NCAA is pretty important because they do say that these bets, if they are made, they have to have an impact on the outcome of the game. Mm-hmm. So that would be like someone fixing for their money. And if that is the case, then the players would end up losing their eligibility, which is a big deal for those kids.
Absolutely.
And that's why ultimately I don't see the way in which it makes sense for those kids to risk everything they've worked for just for some extra cash. After all that practice, it sure would suck to lose all your eligibility just on a silly little bet that you made.
No, yeah, absolutely, I agree. Yeah, so still super dangerous for your career, but I guess in a way a little bit more forgiving. Not that it makes it right, though, in any way. That's still super stupid, in my opinion, to essentially bet your career to potentially get a few bucks, especially at the college level, where everyone's fighting tooth and nail to prove themselves and to kind of gain some rep.
Yeah, for sure. So the second one that we have prepared for you, Jamison Williams of the Detroit Lions. This one took place just recently. Jamison and 3 of his teammates on the Lions were suspended in April of this year, so 2023. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is the most recent run-in we've seen with the players in the league office. Jamison was suspended for a total of 6 games. He made some mobile bets on his phone while he was at the team facility, and like we stated earlier, that's a big no-no. Mm-hmm. So even though it was not on an NFL game, obviously being at the facility is what alerts the league and the commissioner. But much like in this situation in Iowa, the league deemed that none of these games that he bet on were affected in any way by him and his bets. So not much action was taken outside of the suspension for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that really sucked to me because he was looking like a dog coming into the season. I was really rooting for him. I would say it worked out in my favor, since as a Chiefs fan, we played them in week 1. But, we all obviously remember, the season opener, how that game went. Jameson not being there didn't really end up making a difference at all, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was for sure balling, but Mr. Goodell caught him, unfortunately. Then the last one we have prepared for you guys, a bit of a popular one, very well known around social media and to NFL fans. Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley was an Atlanta Falcon in 2021. He ended up having a little bit of an injury and was dealing with some mental health issues. So he kind of resorted to stepping away from the team, taking a break to focus on himself and his mental health, heal up for the next season. But in March of 2022, so about a month after the Super Bowl, off-season's getting into full swing, it was made known by the league that they found him betting on the Atlanta Falcons games while he was away from the team. So sitting on his couch betting on his boys. But the league came together. They decided the appropriate suspension for him would be the entire 2022 season. He served his suspension. He was ultimately traded in the middle of the season. Pretty good trade.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And now he's currently on the Jaguars. So what do you think about that one and like the suspension and everything?
Yeah. I mean, thinking about it, I'm honestly so torn because, like, on one side, I'm like, let the dude put some bucks down on his boys because it's like,
Be fun.
if you really got that much confidence in him, bro, just show it. But the other side is just screaming, kind of like the more practical side. That you got to be smarter than that, especially at the level he's at. I get he was sitting at home, probably on his couch like the rest of us, just looking at that that early Sunday slate, just kind of going through, seeing what bets he can make. But at one point you got to think to yourself, with the NFL and how crazy they are with the rules and all the eyes on you, like, how is that an okay thing to do? To me, it's not worth the risk at all. No. But, he's still a super young guy, and I don't know about you, but to me that's everything in a league like this. Yeah. Being in the NFL at a young age is such a crazy advantage over others. You still have plenty of time to reach your prime. You see big names like Patrick Mahomes sat out the first year, came in, already, top 10 quarterback in the league. CJ Stroud is another example, just lighting it up right now. Yep. But if you're going to waste your early years to improve by getting suspended for gambling, when you're already on pace to be a multimillionaire by the time you're 25, then you really have no one to be mad at but yourself. And that's just not towards Ridley. Like, I got the utmost respect for the guy. If I could switch places with him right now, I would in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we would.
I think he's an absolute stud. It's just frustrating to kind of keep hearing about these big names going down for gambling. It makes for bad TV for us because we're not being able to see, the best names on the field. Kind of gives us, a lower quality of game. And it can potentially ruin their careers as well.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is, if I was on that Falcons team, being a receiver, especially playing behind Julio Jones, I'd probably want to bet a few bucks on him to score some touchdowns. Yeah. But I think you hit it on the head. These guys being the millionaires they are and continuing to get into trouble just to win more money doesn't make sense in the slightest. Suspension, it's a pretty controversial topic, especially in Calvin's case, was definitely needed, I think, because there's obviously rules in place. As little as there may be rules and as little voice of the commissioner about the rules there's still rules in place. But an entire year for that might be a little much. I think maybe 6 games, 4 games would be a lot more practical. But especially since he was away from the team, he's not practicing or playing. He doesn't really have a say in the game at all. But obviously risking your career for some extra cash is definitely not worth it, in my opinion.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of like, it's hard to put that line to where it's like just like a slap on the wrist to where it's like it's too much, so kind of drawing that line's a little difficult.
For sure.
But yeah, for sure, like, great stuff, man. I'm going to keep talking in circles, so let's kind of put a bow on this and then get to some Q&A. Sound good?
Yep.
Alrighty, guys. So far, we've talked a lot about gambling and what that means to the league and our society. And as much as I'd love to keep talking about how much money people have lost on betting on things like the Chiefs covering the spread, I think for this segment, we should turn to our fellow classmates and answer some of their questions.
Yes, we've been sent some great questions, so let's dive in. First question that came into us is, what are the rules/policies in other sports associations? I think this is a great question. Because simply we don't have many examples outside of the NFL, for example, like the MLB or the NBA. But the NBA, for example, they state their betting rules is an example of any betting by someone affiliated with the NBA or betting on any of the NBA's properties is banned by the NBA. Penalty for these are fines, suspensions, or even a termination of their contract. Severity of the punishment is determined by the league. But a complete 90-degree turn from this would be baseball, the MLB. They allow gambling outside of baseball-related gambling, so you can go after the game, go bet on the NBA game happening that night. Doesn't really affect the MLB there, so kind of a night and day difference compared to kind of the severe punishments we've seen in the NFL. So it's definitely safe to say the rules are pretty different across the board.
No, absolutely. That's super interesting to see that like baseball is more relaxed about gambling. It's the sport I grew up on. You know, it's the oldest kind of, to me it seems like the chill older brother of American sports. Since it's been around the longest and things like that. But yeah, I think it's nice to see that the other sport, like other big sports around the U.S. Share similar consequences for gambling. It kind of makes it feel like the NFL isn't being completely unfair with their ruling.
Yeah. I think it's cool to see a variety in a way, but I think at the same time, fans and players would sort of like a consensus opinion throughout every league. So there's not one league getting away with something that another league's not getting away with.
Sure.
So having sort of three different policies in my eyes kind of makes way for discussion, though, on seeing maybe what policies are most effective across all the different associations.
Yeah, absolutely. For our second question of the day, we were asked, why is the NFL so strict on all forms of gambling? I can definitely see why it could be confusing when it comes to trying to understand why the NFL has so many rules in place when it comes to players gambling, especially for someone that doesn't, watch the league too much. I think it really just boils down to what we talked about earlier with the NCAA stuff, just integrity. The league cracks down on gambling so much so it can guarantee that the integrity of the game stays sound and is never in question. If only the refereeing could be the same. That's all I'm going to say. Yep. Jokes, of course. But in all seriousness, the league really does try to control anything that could negatively impact the NFL, for better or for worse. If the league allowed players to gamble, it would lead to the complete compromisation of the entire NFL, honestly.
I totally agree with you on that one, especially with the NFL being worried about their image, like you said, for good or bad reasons. But they want to make sure that the integrity and the validity of these games is at no point ever compromised. And you can also, I think from an outsider's perspective, maybe as you're not that big of a football fan and you're hearing about all this, you could kind of see the NFL being sort of hypocritical about gambling. They don't want anyone gambling, but all you'll ever see is like an ad for DraftKings or FanDuel. And the Raiders just moved to Vegas. Teams continue to move to Vegas. All-Star games and Pro Bowl games are in Vegas.
The Oakland A's are going over there.
Yep, totally. So I think looking at all that, it can kind of be seen as kind of a hypocritical situation there for the NFL, but we definitely don't want to get into the referees because we could be here for a whole nother episode.
No, yeah, it seems like in these last couple of years, more than recent history, it's like there's been direct like NFL and like WWE is like slowly kind of becoming like the same kind of shtick there with like, everyone's saying it's like it's all rigged and everything. Like the script is going crazy this year. So no, absolutely, bro. Like as a fan, it's easy to see that the marketing for betting on sports is super abundant and like even encouraged. But as a player, I could see why it may be confusing. Like it's promoted as if it is a part of the sport, but is the only thing the players can actually be allowed to indulge in. Like Travis and Jason's podcast, New Heights, they're sponsored by multiple betting sites and things like that. But when they have to talk about that on the pod, they let their intern come in and talk about it, and then they leave. It's like a little segment that they do, but it's just kind of like crazy how careful they have to be.
And that's the same thing. I don't know if you're a big college football guy, but like on college game day, they'll do like a best bet or something, and they have a guy on the side talking about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Funny stuff there. I think we agree on that one. So moving on to the third question we've been sent in. With the troubles in the NFL and its players getting in trouble with legal stuff, do you think it is fair with how hard this punishment is compared to the rest? I think this is a great question, and we kind of hit on this earlier with like the case studies. But I think what it boils down to and what it depends on is what extremes these players are going to for their bets. If the game's fixed or anything, if they're trying their hardest to ruin the game or something for their money. If a player, for instance, is away from the team, then they don't really have any say or any outside force. Like a random baseball game, I don't know how much punishment should really be taken there. We saw that with the MLB. They don't really have a rule on that.
Sure.
But if someone's betting on a game and they're doing everything they can to kind of sway it in their favor, then most definitely something should be done to those guys. But I think the year-long and 2-year-long punishments might be a little much. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some questionable decisions the league makes with casting out punishments. I totally agree with that. In all honesty, I'm okay with the rules and policies the NFL uses when it comes to betting, but I really just didn't like how they kind of like implemented that over the summer and kind of around that time. I think there should have been like an extremely public statement about how the rules are changing and becoming more strict, and then any player caught gambling before the statement, guys like Calvin Ridley, should have been hit with probably a hefty fine, probably like either what they bet or what they won, maybe even a little more, and maybe given to like, kind of like a charitable cause, either, of Ridley's choice or the NFL's, obviously. I think the suspensions were a little harsh because of the lack of clarity initially given by the league. That kind of ties into like what the chapter, like the textbook chapter is kind of talking about, just with the integrity. You know, as long as, that's not in question, then that's kind of like the main driving force there. But now to get a little political with our final question here. This is really where some people may disagree. What do we think is too far when it comes to gambling in the NFL? And we kind of touched on this earlier with like the severity of the punishments. This is obviously where a lot of morals are going to come into play, like how you really feel about gambling as a whole and how it affects us today in our communities. Like all recreational activities, I think there's always a fine line between, having fun and allowing it to become a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
With betting on sports, I've always felt like it's fun to have friendly wagers with friends, kind of like how you see the guys in the NFL doing now.
Yeah.
Friends and family to kind of like put your money where your mouth is. That's been a saying forever. One thing I love as a football fan is, at the collegiate and pro level, shit talk is just across the board, a big part of it. It just makes it way more fun. I like doing it. My friends do. My family does. But if you're betting money you don't have and are putting like your financial security at risk, especially with your family, and that can lead to addiction and things like that. That's obviously where a line needs to be drawn.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to going too far on betting is probably doing something stupid or like out of the ordinary or abnormal things that you wouldn't do. For example, as a referee, fixing a game, calling fouls on the other team just so you can get your cash. That's definitely too far. You're risking your job, risking the integrity of the game for everyone else. But I think, like you said, betting can obviously be done in safe and fun ways. We see it across the league. We see it everywhere. But when it comes to be like an addiction and a lifestyle, I know like if you're scrolling through Instagram, you'll see funny pictures like when I have to tell the landlord that Kenneth Walker had 9 rushing yards or something.
Yeah.
When you can't afford stuff and when you're spending the money you don't have and it's an addiction, obviously that's when it's become too far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really good stuff here, guys. We really appreciate all of you who reached out with questions. Nothing I love more than talking ball, so I had a blast.
Yeah, for sure. That was a great time.
And, before we get to the end of this, I did want to talk about, you're a big Dallas guy, right? Dallas Cowboys, Texas Longhorns, congratulations to them making it. Really exciting stuff there. I did want to talk about this upcoming Eagles game, big game for both teams here. You got the money line, Dallas -3.5.
Yep.
Do you think they're covering the spread or no?
At home, they've won 13 straight. They've trailed one time, and that was against Seattle.
Yeah, good game too.
Yeah, I think they cover. I think they win by 10.
By 10, really?
Yeah.
Okay, and then so over under. Are you going over then?
What's it at?
It's at 51.5.
51.
So at least 25 by each team.
Yeah, so in Philadelphia it was 29-23.
Something like that. Yeah. One possession.
Yeah. In Dallas, indoors, I'll take the over. High
Really, the
scoring
over?
shootout. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't know if I want to talk about Chiefs Bills, especially with how the Chiefs have been doing, but
That's always a fun game between those two.
Yeah, and it's at KC. I think Josh Allen
Probably bad weather.
Is it?
I don't know.
I haven't looked at the weather yet.
I assume this time.
Right now, KC the line's -1. So I mean,
Pretty much, yeah. Coin flip.
I would hope. I think that's just a home field. Kind of making.
Yeah, they give.
Is it like a field goal for like
Yeah,
the home
3.
team?
Yeah.
3.
Home team gets 3.
So I would say if it's -1, I got to bet on the Chiefs to cover. You'd hope that they would win by at least 1 or more.
Yeah.
The over under 48.5. I'm gonna bet the over and I'm going to bet they cover, but it's going to be like 2 or 3 points. It's not going to be.
I think
don't know.
if the game turns into a shootout, I'll take the Bills in a shootout.
I kind of agree with that. It really just depends on how what Josh Allen.
It depends
shows
on
up.
what Josh Allen and what Chiefs receiver room shows up.
Yeah, because like they're saying like Pacheco might not even play, and honestly, if he doesn't play, I think the spread's gonna dip over to Buffalo. So
probably.
that guy's a dog. But yeah, honestly, I saw the Longhorns got in, so I was kind of rooting for it. My top 4 was Michigan, Washington, and then it would have been Texas, Bama. I mean, I felt so bad for Florida State, but I think the committee made the right call. I know, like
as bad as it sounds, they did.
Yeah,
they did.
just because like you got to put the 4 best teams.
Yeah, no one wants to watch a repeat of what happened last year.
Yeah, and it's like with Florida State, I was tweeting about it. Like they would have gotten blown out by anyone they played in the top 4. So I mean, with Travis in there, I think they get in. But I mean, and obviously he's not the biggest part of their team, but I think he definitely makes too much of a difference to let them in. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, looks like it's about time to wrap things up here. While our topic may be different from the other episodes, it doesn't mean that gambling isn't any less serious. If you or a loved one are experiencing addictive symptoms to gambling in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to the National Helpline with 24/7 availability and 100% confidentiality guaranteed. Just call or text 1-800-GAMBLER to get the help you deserve today. With that being said, I do definitely think we had some really constructive conversations when it comes to the ethics and integrity of sports. Of course, special thanks to Dr. McClooney and Missouri State University for allowing us to sit down and talk about millionaires wasting their money for 30 minutes, and our fellow classmates for being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was a blast, very fun to record and do, and I hope everyone enjoyed and they could learn something from this one.
Yeah, and remember to gamble responsibly. We're not liable for any stupid decisions you make with your money. Okay, this has been the MPACT Podcast with Ethan Christopher and Evan Sappington. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Wow.